Hi there, it's Ingrid here again from Camera Shy, and this week we're going to talk about another underutilized button on your DSLR camera, and it's called exposure compensation. Now, if you have a Canon, the exposure compensation button is this little plus minus button right here on the back. On some of the Canons it's up here at the top, and on some of the Nikons it's up here on the top as well. So what you're going to be looking out for is that little plus minus button, and let's figure out why would you use it. So what does this do? Well, the exposure compensation button is your way of controlling the exposure of your shot, i.e. how bright or how dark it is, and override the camera's settings. This can only happen if you're in the program auto mode, the aperture priority mode, or shutter priority mode. If you're in auto mode, this won't work. But this is a really good way of getting a feel for exposure without actually knowing what you're doing. So when would you use exposure compensation? Well, sometimes you take a photograph and the camera doesn't just get it right. It might be a little bit too dark or a little bit too bright, just not exactly what you see through your eye. This sometimes happens when the photograph is has got an extreme of light. So say, for example, if you're photographing in snow, the camera sees all of that bright snow and tries to darken your image down. Or likewise, when you're shooting into the sun for a sunset, or if your subject is backlit by the sun, the camera gets a little bit confused by that lighting and it tries to darken the image down. But you know in your mind's eye and what you can see that this isn't the way the photograph should look. So what you need to do is overexpose your photograph a little bit. So how do you do this? Well, you adjust your exposure compensation by pressing and holding down that plus or minus button and rotating the command dial towards the plus if you want to make your image brighter, or towards the negative if you want to make your image darker. So what you're really saying is, hey camera, I see what you're giving me, but could you make it just a little bit brighter or just a little bit darker? Thanks ever so much. Be sure to say it in a nice way, because this is one of the only times that you know a little bit more about what's going on than the camera does, and we don't want to offend. So remember, you're not really controlling how the camera makes it brighter or darker, and it can only do this by slowing down the shutter speed or opening up the aperture, and this will ultimately affect how your image looks, but it really does help to just give you a little bit more of an insight to what's going on with the exposure, and so you're one step closer again to using these modes in a more manual way. So venture out of auto mode into your program auto, your shutter priority and your aperture priority mode, and play with your exposure compensation to see how it affects your photos. So I hope you found this video about exposure compensation useful. Be sure to give it a thumbs up if you liked it, share it with your friends, and subscribe to my channel so that you never miss the next one. And if you're looking for more video tips and tutorials like this, be sure to check out the blog and subscribe there too, and you'll get the next video right in your inbox. Till next time, happy snapping!